Welcome to Standing on the Edge. This is your host, Randy Saplata. Today is Friday, March 11th, and today we will be talking, about I Told You So on the Edge of the Coin. We also have the topic of doublespeak during Think Like the Rich, and today's personal story will be Where Are the Rats Going? Finally, as always, we'll finish up the show with What Would Happen If. And by the way, if you like the content presented here and in other videos that you see, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up and then subscribe to the channel to ensure that Facebook and YouTube keep me around for a while. You are listening to Standing on the Edge. When we come back, it's time for the Edge of the Coin. And welcome back to the show. The Edge of the Coin is brought to you by the CS Media Group. We provide the outstanding talent and you get the extraordinary entertainment. The Edge of the Coin is a segment that shows us a way of opening up our mindsets to allow us to explore both sides of any situation. We're going to jump right into today's topic, which is I told you so. I told you so. Get rid of those. I am not the kind of person that really likes going around going, yeah, I told you so. I knew it. I called it. I did. But I mean, I really got to go ahead and I've got to put my hat in. I called it a couple of years ago. I've been watching it happen for several years, at least 5, closer to 6, and actually probably even closer to about 12 years. But we finally went ahead and hit what I knew was eventually going to happen. I mean, think about it. There is only so much that can be done to try to prop up any industry before it starts to go ahead and wobble, and then, of course, to collapse in on itself or to just topple over, plain and simple, like a Jenga block. Okay, I mean, yeah, you can go ahead and take your Jenga game and you can put every single stack up in 3s and then keep on adding up to it, even putting 3 on each one, and it's very, very, very stable. It's very difficult to knock down without some huge force coming at it from the side, and so, or a big earthquake or something like that. But eventually it's going to build up so high, so tall, that it's going to fall over just because. There's no real reason for it. It just happens. Now, if you do like the normal Jenga game, and you go ahead and you start off with blocks of 3 all the way up, crisscrossing back and forth, so they're nice and stable, and then you start taking out a block here or a block there, and you go ahead and reinsert it up on the top of the game, okay? Even if you start from the bottom and you only take the middle section out of each level and you keep on putting it at the top, boom, 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 eventually, again, because it gets so tall, it's going to fall over. If you're like me and you like to go ahead and take things out from the bottom and only have the centerpiece balancing everything else, it might still be very stable as you pull it out and go ahead and put it up on top, because it's more fun to go ahead and do it that way, in my opinion. But then everything topples much quicker than otherwise. And this, like I said, is what's been happening now. Now, I was really turned into, I won't say turned on, but I was, how can I put it, made aware of. I was made aware of this situation that we're in right now. Actually, believe it or not, back in 2001, 2002 era, right at that point. I was reading my favorite author, Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, and he had a book that just came out called Rich Dad's Prophecy. Rich Dad's Prophecy, and this one was based off of literally simplistic ideas that made so much sense. There was no way for things not to happen in the way it was mentioned. Okay, now here's the facts of life. Basically, is what it is. People die. People are born. they grow up, they get feeble or less strong, they get weaker, and then they die. That's basically the four stages of life, okay? The first three quarters of that is growing, the last quarter is declining, and finally it's boom, death and burial is what's happening. If you look at life in that way, it's very, very easy to see, okay? And in the year 2000, and actually it was before this that the book was written, but when I brought it up, or when I learned about it, 2000, 2001, 2002, right in that general area, the statistics alone, when I'm not usually a huge fan of statistics, but this one really caught my attention, was that the baby boomers by the year 2016 were going to start really, really hitting the age where they had to pull retirement money out of the stock market. It was done by law back in the 1970s. It was made into law to do that. They said, "Oh, put your money into a 401k or into an IRA or something and save for your retirement tax free, build it up, not a big deal." And then they put and slapped ERISA into place immediately, which was the employee retirement and investment, a savings account, I think is what it actually stands for. And they made it into a law that stated, yes, the moment that the people turn a certain age, at that point, I want to say it was 65 and a half, they by law had to start taking money out of that account. And they had to take a certain amount out of that account. Why? Because Congress was not going to allow everybody to go ahead and save money for years and years and years and years and years and never, ever, ever see a penny of that. They wanted their chunk. The reason they were willing to let it go so long was because of two reasons. First of all, they knew, once again, statistically, that retirees generally, once they retire, they are dead within 5 years, which meant that they were going to get back pretty much 100% of that money that was put inside of there, unless it was well protected. They didn't tell people how to protect it, and therefore they knew that probably 90% of that money was going to come right back into their coffers, and they were just going, okay, we can wait, this will work. The second reason was because even if it was protected, they knew that the moment that people started withdrawing out of that account, their taxes were going to be much higher than if they taxed it first to put it into the account. Why? Because, let's put it this way, if you are saving $1,000 a year, we'll make it nice and simple, $1,000 a year, and the IRS goes ahead and puts you into the lowest tax bracket available, they would take out 10% of that, generally speaking. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less, but roughly about 10% of taxes. Well, that's $100 every year for taxes. Okay. Now you think, okay, well, I can handle $100 out of 1,000. That's not a big deal. But let's go ahead and fast forward that. If you had an IRA and you had been saving for 20 years, and you were putting in $1,000 every single year, and it was compounding because it was being invested into the stock market, and that $20,000 that you invested became $30,000. Well, now you would think that they would want, again, the same amount of money, which would be now $3,000 based upon a 10% tax bracket. But you're no longer in a 10% tax bracket. You're no longer in the lowest tax bracket. At $30,000, you get bumped up, not one, not two, but into the third tax bracket, if I'm not mistaken. Check with your accountant and or your bookkeeper, and they can tell you for sure. But if I'm correct in thinking, you're into the third tax bracket at that point. In which case, they're not taxing you 10%; they're taxing you more like between 18 and 20% on that money. And even if you only go ahead and pull out $1,000 a month, which is laughable for trying to live off of. If you pulled out $1,000 a month, that means that you would be taking out $1,200 a year. $1,200 a year at 20% is $240 out of that $1,200, which means that you are now going ahead and actually making not $1,200, you're only getting $1,000 a year, which would then equal out to about roughly somewhere in the neighborhood of $850 to $900 a month is what you would be going ahead and living off of. And again, that's laughable. Now, that's a very, very simple example. Of course, you can go ahead and you can use the calculator to get the math. It's probably going to work out even worse than what I was just saying right there. Okay. But it gets worse the more money you have. Some of these people have been saving in their retirement funds since 1973 and before, when it was first introduced in the first place. And they've been saving for 50, 60, almost 70 years. They've got over $1 million. This does not put them in the lowest tax bracket. This puts them in the highest tax bracket to be paid off or to be taxed on. And when you go ahead and start taking out money, once again, if you got $1 million in savings, you're not going to want to live off $1,000 a month. It's going to be more like $3,000 to $4,000 a month. Let's go a little while. Okay, you take out $5,000 a month. $5,000 a month, that's $60,000 a year. Now that still is, it's not a lot of money, especially when you're trying to go ahead and live in a decent pattern. Okay, $60,000 is not a lot of money. But if you're making $60,000 of income, they're still taxing you at the highest possible tax bracket that you can go ahead and get. And at this point, you're getting basically almost 30% taxes wiped straight off the top. If you pull out $1,000 every single month and you're getting 30% taken off, that means you're already losing $300 and plus. You're getting somewhere around $650 to live. Now, if you're doing that $5,000 and they're taking the 30% off from there, then we're talking about we're talking basically $1,500 out of that, and that leaves you $3,500 to go ahead and live on every single month. Some people might go, well, man, that I could deal with that. I can go ahead and buy a lot of food for that for the month. But if you are used to spending $100,000 to $200,000 a year, which is about what you're making if you're able to go ahead and have $1 million savings account, you're not going to want to drop down to 60 because that to you will be unacceptable. And we are now at the point where it's really starting to show up. Now, going back to the book was saying that by the year 2016, all these people will start going ahead and really pulling out their savings at this point. And because of that, there's only so much money in the stock market. The moment you start pulling all that money back out again to live off of, that means less money is in the stock market to be invested. Less money is there and things are actually automatically going to start declining. And eventually it's going to get to a tipping point, just like that Jenga game, and things are going to go ahead and crash because the forces are too strong in order to do that. Now, the one thing the book did not foresee, and the author said so as well, he did not foresee that the government and the Federal Reserve, by extension, would start injecting billions and trillions of dollars into the stock market, into the bond market, into the economy to help prop up this stock market high in doing so. So while for the last 6 years, all these baby boomers have been collecting their check every single month because they've had to do it, and Congress actually went ahead and extended it at one point to where now I believe you're able to go ahead and wait until you're 71 and a half to go ahead and start pulling things out. Doesn't matter. They're still starting to go ahead and collect all these checks. There's more money now pulling money out of the stock market than is putting into the stock market. And because of that, it's like that Jenga game. They're taking out those little blocks from the bottom. They're taking out those little blocks from the bottom. And things are starting to get a little bit weaker. And okay, yeah, we can go ahead and afford it here. So we'll just take the center one out of the very bottom. We're going to stick it back on the top so it looks like it's the same size and or it's growing. And we'll go ahead and take the next level. We'll move the middle one out from there, and we'll go ahead and put it on top. It's still nice and strong. It's still very sturdy. Hey, wait, okay, things aren't growing quite as quickly. Let's go ahead and take out 2 from the fourth level. From the fourth level, boom, 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 and we're still strong. We're still balanced really easily. We got them on the top, so it looks just nice and easy. And we can't go ahead and take out 2 to the next one because that's really going to go ahead and do it. So we'll take 1 out from the one on the 5th level, and we'll put it up on the top, and 1 out from the 6th level. And it's starting to get a little low again. Let's go ahead and take out 2 from the 7th level. We stick it up on the top. And yes, the stock market is growing and getting bigger and higher, and it's going ahead and breaking its own records. But what happened at the bottom? At the bottom, it's still shaky. It's still a little unsteady. If you go ahead and bump the table in the wrong way, there things go. Now, this is what's been happening for the last 6 years. It actually started happening prior to that back in 2008 during the last crash when all these baby boomers woke up and went, holy crap. We saw our savings account decline by nearly 50%. So anybody that had $1 million automatically got wiped down to 500,000. And those were the ones that were still within 5 or 6 years of retiring. And they went, you know what? I'd rather have half of my money firmly in hand right now than to let it grow back up again and lose it again and not be anywhere more other than losing out that extra bit of money. Because you don't just put in the same exact amount of money to get back to where you were. If you lose anything, if you lose 1% of what you've got, it doesn't take 1% to get it back to where it was. It takes 1.4% or a little more, basically 1.5%. 1.5% to get you back where you would have been had you not lost that amount of money. Because the stock market doesn't stop going when you lose money. If you put in what you just lost, you're still behind the stock market from where you would have been in the first place. So in order to get back to that point, you've got to inject even more money. And this is what a lot of the baby boomers went ahead and saw and said, forget it. We're going ahead and taking early retirement. Boom, boom, boom. We'll go ahead and pay the penalties. We'll take care of whatever, but we'll keep the cash in hand. So that was the first level of Jenga taken out. Bam. Well, we're still strong because we still got so many more people putting money into the market than taking it out. Then in 2009, we had the housing market go ahead and start tumbling. And a lot more baby boomers went, oh, wait a minute, I don't want to lose my house. I'm going to go ahead and take early retirement. And there we go again, taken out. Next level, there we go. Take one section out right there. We lose another section of the baby boomers. Not a super huge amount, but enough to be able to make a difference. But they had to go ahead and put more money back in. And now we start seeing things that are really starting to get a little shaky here. Things are going okay, but they had to put quantitative easing in to help out. And so they took the money, the government took the money, and they stuck it, boom, on the top to keep the levels up. Yes, we are incredibly strong. We're strong. We're not going anywhere. We are just as mighty as we were before. Yeah. Well, we start getting over to 2016. And 2 years before that, 2014, or a little earlier than that, Congress says, you know what? We already had so many people start trying to go ahead and take out their money on early retirement. Let's extend the requirement to try to recoup what's going on from there. And actually, that happened a little earlier, even than 2014. So they extended the period of time. But they still had people that were going, no, not going to happen. I'm not going to wait longer. I've worked long enough. We're going to start taking out money right now. And so 2016 comes along. Boom, boom, boom. Like clockwork, people start going ahead and taking money out. What happens? QE2, put more money back on top. More money is coming out of the bottom. We have another slight crash or a recession happen shortly after that. And this Federal Reserve injects QE3 and puts it up on top. People are still taking money out of the pocket. Well, now the businesses are really starting to worry about that. And because there's so much free money going around, floating out in um, the economy, they start borrowing some of this money at super low interest rates, and they buy back their stock. So they have more money into their own stock, less in the stock market. Once again, that's taking that Jenga piece down to the bottom. Things start to go ahead and come on down a little bit. We put in another bit of floating some money. And by the way, after these quantitative easings, the Federal Reserve did not stop injecting money into the economy. They just slowed it down. They slowed it down. Now, you get finished with that. This is going to be a super long segment, and I apologize. But you get finished with that. We hit 2018. Boom, we got another mini crash coming up for some reason. And the Federal Reserve says, okay, we got to have another section. In the meantime, all the people are still pulling out money from the stock market. All the businesses are still going ahead. We're going to go ahead and take back our own stock so we have more control over our own businesses. And the Federal Reserve and the Congress say, boom, put up another top part on there. And now it's the Federal Reserve is actually injecting it directly into the bond market to help try to prop up the bottom. They are putting in these stabilization floats to try to prop up the bottom. At the same time, they're throwing money on top of everything as well to make it look like we are super strong. 2020 hits. Everybody knows what happened in 2020. It sucked, and we went ahead and tanked. But 3 days later, we're pushed right back up again. And amazingly, we still have incredible highs when it comes to the stock market. Amazing. But we still got people taking money out at that point. How long is it going to happen before the Jenga blocks crumble? Well, you know what? That is what we will be talking about here in just a minute. And it's going to be very interesting. You are listening to Standing on the Edge. When we come back, it's time to think like the rich. And welcome back to the show. Think Like the Rich is brought to you by Mama's Decadence, offering luxurious, I love that word, luxurious refreshment for your body inside and out. You need to treat your body and that of your lover to a bit of luxury from Mama's. You can find out what's available by emailing Heather at Mama's Decadence, that's DECADENTS, Decadence, at gmail.com. Mama's Decadence at gmail.com. By the way, Mama's is hosting a sock drive at the moment to go ahead and benefit the homeless people of Atlanta, Georgia. She's looking for new or unworn black or white socks. Those are what's preferred. The homeless event's going to be on June 18th. If you want more information, you can telephone 470-554-2134, or you can email Heather at mamasdecadence@gmail.com. Now, Think Like the Rich is a segment designed to help everyone think past their circumstances and encourage a different course of action. Today's topic is doublespeak. Doublespeak. And for those of you that are wondering what the heck I mean by doublespeak, I want to go ahead and mention to you that doublespeak is basically where you go ahead and try to say one thing that sounds super, super, super intelligent and doesn't tell you anything at all. It doesn't tell you anything at all. So let's go ahead and go back to where we were a second ago in our first segment. And you're going to remember we left off with a wobbly Jenga board economy. Okay, we got one piece pulled out of the bottom, one piece pulled out of the second row, one piece pulled out of the third row. All of a sudden, we had to pull out two pieces out of the fourth row, and then realize, no, that's a little bit too shaky. And so we're putting everything back on top again. We'll do one piece, and one piece out there, and things are still fairly stable. We're not too terribly bad right now, but oh my gosh, we got other stuff, and we're still pulling out pieces out of the bottom and putting them right back on the top. Now, doublespeak comes out like this because what's happening is this. Our government leaders, and it doesn't matter if they're Democrat, it doesn't matter if they're Republican, it doesn't matter if they are libertarian or independent, because there are very few I don't think there are any libertarians that are actually in Congress at this particular moment. Okay. But it doesn't matter what side of the fence they sit on, they're all going to be interested in one thing: what's best for their own people, first and foremost. And unfortunately, that line of thinking pervades because it's not just now about their people, it's what they can get off out of their people by getting the rest of Congress to go ahead and fall in line with their ideals. And most of the time, these ideals are not in the best interest of other people. Why? Because there's a lot of push and shove and a lot of quid pro quo, and you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours, and that sort of thing. And it just ends up being to where it's basically harmful for everybody except the leaders. Take one case in point, which I just heard yesterday on the radio. Okay. And this is President Biden talking in his debates before he became president. He was talking about how he was going to attack U.S. oil and gas. He was going to shut them down. He was going to shut down a pipeline. He was going to stop drilling 100%. He was going to go ahead and take out everything that we had that was gas and oil and everything unclean in favor of our clean energy, the electric vehicles and the windmills and solar and everything else that went along with it. This was him in the debates attacking these industries. Okay. Now, what he's saying is that because of Putin, because of President Putin, we have huge spikes in our gas prices. Because of President Putin, we have huge shortages in trying to get our stuff around. Because of President Putin, we have problems with the people in America making stuff in America. The weird thing is that President Putin didn't do any of this stuff until about 2 weeks ago. It was all talk until about 2 weeks ago. And even now, I still think it's hyped up a lot more than it really needs to be, because I really don't think there's quite as much going on over in the Ukraine along with Russia in that particular takeover as seems to be the case. I really don't. And people are probably going, man, you're too blind. You don't see what's going on, so on and so forth, yada, yada, yada. And I'm going, the numbers just don't add up. The numbers just don't add up. But in the meantime, here back at home in the United States, gas prices almost doubled overnight. They definitely went up from $2 to $3 within 1 year. They went in from $3 to $4 in 1 month after that. And they went from $4 plus, and I'm talking about prices here in Atlanta. If you're in a different part of the country, I understand that there's a lot of places that are higher than us. Okay. But here in Atlanta, overnight, they went from $4 to $4.15. And then the next day, they went up to $4.30 and up from there. And you're trying to tell me that because you are attacking the oil industry, that it's all President Putin's fault that we have gas and oil price hikes like this. And you're trying to tell me that because you wanted to go ahead and attack the industries that are the lifeblood for getting the goods and services that we use here in America, trucked to us, trained to us, shipped to us, that the breakdown in the supply chain is because of an external factor that's only been around and really doing anything for 2 weeks. And even then, for a week after that, we were doing nothing about attacking his supply of gas. So really, that's only been 1 week's worth of President Putin doing something when it affects us. That is a classic case of doublespeak, in my opinion. because we have our leaders speaking out of one side of the mouth, yammering and so on and so forth. And then they turn around, and when something happens that's a direct cause or a direct correlation to what they were trying to get done in the first place, they turn around and say, oh, no, it's not me. It's somebody else. It's their fault. Let them take care of it. And that's the crazy thing, because literally everything that they were saying they were going to get done, which has come to pass, they're now blaming it on external factors instead of taking credit or even the blame for it happening. And yes, President Biden is still to this day saying these gas prices and these higher inflation prices, these are great because it's going to force us into a cleaner economy. Well, apparently he's not thinking everything through, because in order to get to the cleaner economy, we still have to burn fossil fuels. We have no way at this current time to make 100% clean energy without dirtying up the atmosphere. And if we're going to get these items from overseas to put into our clean vehicles and our clean economy, they're dirtying up the air even worse than we would have been in the first place. But wait a minute, let's go ahead and bring these things back to the United States. Let's manufacture it here in the United States. Well, guess what? You can't burn coal. It's a dirty thing to do. You can go ahead and use nuclear power, but nuclear power has got its own differences as well. It is certainly not inexpensive. It costs a lot of money. It costs a lot of taxes, and it takes forever to go ahead and build it in the first place, let alone try to go ahead and start using it. I mean, there's things right now here in Georgia. We just got a third reactor, I think it was, our fourth reactor, that had been approved 12, 15 years ago, and it's still under construction in some points because of delays. Still. I mean, it's nuts. But we're going to be forced into a clean economy. I don't think so. I really don't think so. And here's the other thing too that we're not looking into, okay? This is not statistics. This is fact. We have known since 1998 and earlier that the United States has a very, very, very fragile electrical infrastructure. Very fragile. I mean, to the point where they were making television shows about it and trying to take down the grid, and all they had to do was go ahead and bomb one of three sites that weren't even protected, and they could go ahead and take down 1/3 to the whole of the eastern seaboard. This is not a good thing. Not at all. So if we are going ahead and using this for the moment, this particular scenario where we are going ahead and remembering that the grid is still just as fragile, it's still just as unprotected or slightly less so, and we're going ahead and building out our infrastructure to use even more electricity, well, all we need is a couple of things to happen, or even one of two things to happen. First of all, once again, they just have to go ahead and target a certain site, one of three sites, and boom, they've just gone ahead and taken out pretty much all of America. They don't even have to do that, however. A rogue nation such as Korea can go ahead and toss up a dirty nuclear bomb. Boom, exploded up 10,000 miles into the air just outside of the atmosphere where we can't go ahead and see it until it's almost too late. It's a dirty nuclear bomb. It doesn't harm anybody, so to speak, basically. But guess what? Wham! Our electrical grid is completely knocked out because of the EMP, the electromagnetic pulse that it ignites throughout there. It throws off all of the satellites in the area as well that are going on. And just literally, just like that, like dominoes set up, all rolling down together, or that Jenga board, that's being held up, propped up by a few pieces, it comes crashing down, and we're toast. We are literally toast. We cannot afford to go ahead and put ourselves onto one type of strengthening block. You have to go ahead and put yourself into several different places, several different pillars to make sure that if one fails or starts getting weak, you've got something else strengthening you as well. Now, am I saying we should be 100% on gas and oil? No, I'm not. I don't personally like that myself either, but right now that's the best thing we have. But if we use gas and oil to a certain extent, and we supplement it with electricity, and we supplement it with wood, and we supplement it with nuclear power, and do all of these things all together, then yes, I think we can go ahead and get a cleaner environment in doing so, and in doing so, strengthen ourselves and strengthen everybody else at the same time. But that doesn't sell votes. It does not sell votes. You are listening to Standing on the Edge. When we come back, it's time for Tales from the Edge. And welcome back to the show. Tales from the Edge is brought to you by the HRS Foundation, investing in future generations to ensure a better tomorrow. Now, Tales from the Edge is a personal example of people and situations that I've experienced during my path to growing wealthy. Today's story is, where are the rats going? And a lot of people are going, wait. We were just talking about the economy, and we were talking about how you got the infrastructure that's being pulled down and doublespeak that's happening. Why are we talking about rats? Well, right now, those of you who know me know that for a long time, for 7 years, I actually worked on a cruise ship. I lived on the ship. I was 10 months at sea every single year for those 7 years. Okay, that's a long time to go ahead and do that. You learn a completely different lifestyle by being at sea for that long a time. And you learn that you just don't rely on one thing, because if one critical system goes down, everything is much more difficult. Everything is much more difficult. But you also start hearing stories from experienced sailors, and the one that really struck with me was that back in the day when everything was wind powered, before steam was going, we had all these sailing ships all over the world. And that hasn't been really that long ago. That's been a little bit less than 200 years, or a little more than 200 years, excuse me, a little more than 200 years that it was 100% wind powered. And only about 100 years ago now that we really started seeing huge amounts of steamships crossing. It was still wind powered for the most part. So at that point, if you weren't paying attention and you got off course and you struck a reef and started sinking, what happens? Well, you know something's really bad when the rats are jumping overboard, or the rats are getting off the ship. Why? Because they hate water. They hate water. They really do. They cannot stand to be wet whatsoever. So they're going ahead and trying to go ahead and find anything they can to keep themselves afloat, because they don't want to die. They don't want to drown. They don't want to be wet. Plain and simple. Well, when the rats leave, what's left? It's only the people that are willing to fight and try to go ahead and stick around, or the people that are so stupid they don't know any better. That's pretty much it. And for all the words, about the captain going down with the ship, it's the same thing. If he knows what's going on, he's going to fight as hard as he can to go ahead and try to keep the ship from sinking any more than it has. And if he's just been way too stupid about it or too ignorant about what's going on, he's going down because he has no choice. Those are pretty much the only two ways of things happening there. So let's compare this to our economy. Let's compare this to 2022 right now. All right. We're going down. The United States is going down. There's nothing we can do about it. We might be able to, as the song says, pick up the pieces, but it's going to take many years to do so. It's going to take at least a decade. At least a decade. And that's going to be a decade of hard work in order to do so. And that's if we let it fall right now. If we keep trying to prop up what's going on or try to make it look like things are still growing, as in that Jenga game that I was telling you about, it's going to make it even worse and worse and worse. And then if we have a cataclysmic event such as, boom, losing out all of our electricity, and we've got nothing to help support that or to fall back on, we've got a major, major problem. And it could be even 20 years or more for us to really get back on any sort of decent track, let alone where we should have been going all along. But here's the other thing too. I mentioned that the rats go ahead and leave because they only leave the people that are too ignorant or stupid, or the people that are willing to fight. Well, right now, I am pretty much tending to see most of the United States government as one of those rats. And they are preparing because they know the ship is sinking. They know the ship is sinking. And so they're trying to go ahead and get their own affairs in order so they can blast out as quickly as possible and not get caught in the final blow. I mean, there's all kinds of things that are going on right now, and we're hearing about it, such as Nancy Pelosi investing heavily into the stock market through quote unquote insider trades and getting all kinds of other money going in that should have been illegal. That's debatable, because if she did it the right way, the way that the SEC says is possible, then there's nothing wrong with it. But it sure doesn't seem very good to the average person. And at the same time, she's saying to the average person, "You gotta do things this way. You gotta do things this way." But I don't have to do it this way because I'm rich and I can go ahead and take care of things. To me, that tells me one of two things. First of all, that she, or by extension anybody else doing the same thing, number one, is very smart. Two, those people want, for the most part, to keep everybody else ignorant. Because if they allowed us to go ahead and use the same exact strategies and teach us the same exact things that they use right there, everybody would be floating up more or less to the same level as well, or at least have a greater chance of being there. No, they don't want that. They're a rat. They want to go ahead and take what they got and run off with it as quickly as they can. Now, at the same time, too, let's go ahead and talk about who's going to be left to fight. Who's left to fight? Well, right now, in our economy, we are pretty much almost evenly divided between Republicans and Democrats. I say almost evenly. There's always been some sort of play in there where it would basically be roughly around 40% Republicans and roughly around 40% Democrats, give or take a few here and there. And then for the most part, everybody in the center, the 20% that was left, was pretty much libertarians, or those people that were so independent they couldn't tell which way to go because they liked things on both sides that were being talked about. Right now, it seems that our country has been divided more or less into roughly around 45 and 45%, and that independent section is shrinking down to about 10%, or 10%, because that other would be 90% from there. Now, here's the interesting thing, because a poll was just recently spoken to the. It was supposed to be to a huge scattering of people that are aged 18 to age 35. Now, those are the people that would actually be beneficial in a war to the armies. Okay, those are the people that would be where the armies would first go to try to get the people to fight a war in general. Okay, 18 to 35. But right now, out of those 18 to 35%, and this is including Democrats and Republicans and the independents, everybody in that poll there, out of that, nearly 1/3 of those people on all sides said we would not stay to fight. We would run away. We would run away. Out of what's left, the 2/3 that's left, the 66%. Out of those 2/3, most of them would be aged 45 to 65. And then nearly all of them would be, and then everybody that's left, of course, is over the age of 65 from there. Now, I might have it wrong, but I want to say that basically most of them, probably around out of the 66%, let's just divide it in half, make it nice and easy. All right, half of them are below 65, half of them are above 65. Boom, there you go. Now that doesn't leave a lot left to go. Okay, the people that are over the age of 65, they might be willing to fight, but how able are they to fight? For the people under the age of 65, they might be able to fight, but how willing are they to fight? It does not look good. And so, if that's the case, and we have people that want to fight but can't, and we have people that can fight but don't want to left in our economy, what is there to save? What's there to save? Who's going to be left to fight for it and be able to make it up? That's the biggest part that I see going wrong right here, right now. And it's only going to get worse. Who's going to be left to fight? We don't know. But if everybody else decides that they don't want to fight and so they leave, well, if they leave quick enough, then, yes, we may be able to go ahead and salvage a lot and see what's going on. But right now, it is not looking good. It is not looking good at all, because what it means to me is that if the people between 18 and 35, if most of them go ahead and take off, leaving us, everybody else, in the situation that we're at, to go ahead and pick up the pieces and go on from there, well, we're going to have to go ahead and teach those people under the age of 18 the way to do things. Now, for those of you that have kids, you're already laughing yourself silly on the floor, because the kids don't want to listen to what the old folks have to say. They've got their own ideas. They know what's going on. They know what's going to be best for them. They don't know how to take care of things. And then finally, they get themselves into trouble and go, wait, I need help. What do I do? And that is finally where the old folks will get in and say, okay, do it this way, take it this way, go this far, and it will be better, but it's going to take a little bit of time because of the mess you put yourself into. Which tells me, again, we're in for a long, hard struggle. And it's going to be at least 10 years, probably closer to 20. For those of you that are into end time scenarios, we're in it. Plain and simple. I mean, even if you don't believe it, we're in the end time scenarios, okay? I mean, personally, I think that we have just gone from horseman number 3 to horseman number 4, and we're about to go ahead and start a huge struggle and get into the fifth part of the first part of Revelations, and it's just going to get worse and worse and worse in there. So hunker down, get yourself prepared, and we'll go ahead and keep on going and struggling as far as we can, as long as we can, and doing what's going on. In the meantime, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be pretty, and it certainly will not be anything like what we saw in the last 100 years. You are listening to Standing on the Edge. When we come back, it's time to close out the show with What Would Happen If. And welcome back to the show. What Would Happen If is brought to you by DJR Enterprises. Great entertainment when you need it. All you have to do is telephone 470-554-2134 to get involved in the wonderful opportunity that is your next event. Today's topic for What Would Happen If is, if our government leaders are so smart, why do they always seem surprised by the consequences of their actions and still do just the opposite of what they say needs to be done? Why are they so surprised when their ideas don't work out? Now, let's put a pin in that, so to speak, for a second. All right. Let's pause that for a moment and think about how a child learns. A child does not go, if I do this, it's going to lead to that. And that means that it's probably going to be really good or really bad, depending on how I take it. They don't think like that. They go, oh, look, that's cool. I want that. Let me go for it. And then they either get it or they don't get it. And they either mess up getting it or they mess up not getting it. Pretty much they mess up until they figure out how to do it properly. It is act, then learn, then think, and act again. It's completely opposite to where we think as adults it needs to be done. Think first and learn first, then think about it, and then act about it. Or think, then act, then learn if you are like some other people as well. Here are some examples, all right? Former President Barack Obama. Former President Barack Obama spent nearly 8 years telling us that the sea levels are rising. Sea levels are rising. We got to do something about it. Sea levels are rising. We got to go ahead and stop the erosion of the continents. And we got to make sure that things are taken care of and so on and so forth. The first thing he does when he gets out of office and retires, he builds himself a mansion by the sea. He's in the process of building a second mansion by the sea. The first one was over in Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts, Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts, by the sea. The second one that he's going right now, is in Hawaii. It's surrounded by the sea. But the sea levels are rising. He just wanted a front row seat to be able to watch it, I guess. Pete Buttigieg, who currently is one of the acting ministers. I don't remember his exact title right now, but it's one of the acting ministers of the Energy Department, okay? And he's saying, we've got to cut our fuel usage. We've got to go ahead and make sure we get into cleaner energy. And because of these rising interest rates and because of these rising fuel prices, I'm going to go ahead and bicycle my way into work every day. I'm doing that. And then he turns around and gets filmed. He gets caught on camera being driven in a big SUV up to 2 blocks before he gets to work, pulling a bicycle out of the back of the SUV and bicycling in the rest of the way, waving at a camera as he goes. Hey, see, I'm doing it. I'm bicycling into work. I told you I was going to do it. 2 blocks, Pete. 2 blocks. President Biden, and I mentioned this earlier, President Biden says that electric vehicles are cleaner vehicles and will dramatically reduce oil consumption. But in order to manufacture these vehicles, oil is crucial. Electricity is crucial also, but it's got to be produced somehow. And in order to produce it, you have to burn less clean processes in order to make the cleaner processes. If you use radioactivity, if you use these nuclear plants, they have what's called waste. Nuclear waste. Where does it go? It doesn't just get burned up in the air and reprocessed. No, it doesn't. What happens? They take it into the desert and bury it. They take it into the desert and bury it. Right now, here's a fun little fact for you. Many, if not most, of our nuclear vessels that are submarines or were submarines in the past are buried in the Washington State desert. Right now. You can look it up and find out. You can see that. It is right now in the desert. But we produce all this other electricity in doing so. Well, that's great, but how much of it is wasted if it can't be used? And you can't use all of the electricity on everything we got right now. Well, what are we going to do? We're going to have to go ahead and build out the infrastructure. We're going to have to go ahead and make sure we got all kinds of electric vehicle stations that are between here and the rural areas of the United States so that everybody can go ahead and use these cleaner vehicles. Well, guess what? If you do that, it's going to hurt in the short run and in the long run also. Why? Because first of all, these clean vehicles, so to speak, quote unquote, clean vehicles are more expensive than the quote unquote dirty vehicles. Much more expensive in some cases. Okay, they're anywhere between $10,000 and $50,000 more expensive than the equivalent oil burning and gasoline burning vehicle. If the people can't afford these vehicles right now because they are out of a job, or they're in a lower paying job, or their industry is going broke because government is attacking it, or they are fighting inflation because prices are going up all over the place, or they've lost half of their savings because of the stock market, because of a stock market crash or something of that nature. Why in God's name would they purchase something more expensive in the first place? They're not going to most of the time. The other con on this one that I can see, and I have an electric vehicle. I don't want an electric vehicle because of this. And this is the big thing. I love to travel. I love and stay out there as long as I can. In an electric vehicle, you have only a certain amount of time you can go ahead and go. Now, the same is true for a gas burning vehicle. I get it, okay? But if you can only drive basically 300 miles on a gas burning vehicle, that 300 miles most of the time will get you, if you're able to drive straight through, around 5 hours of driving. 5 hours of driving. In an electric vehicle, depending on how fast you go, you can only go up to 2 hours. 2 hours. And then it takes you a minimum of between 2 and 4 hours to reintroduce the electricity into the vehicle to drive another 2 hours. So you basically have 6 hours of usage or 6 hours of waiting time in order to get 2 hours driving distance. That is horribly inefficient. Horribly inefficient, in my opinion. Now, great for around town. Okay, yeah, I get it. Not a big deal. If you're going back and forth to work, sure, by all means. But if you want to go and visit your Aunt May out in East Texas, and you live in Atlanta, Georgia, you're not going to be able to drive 2 hours and get there and visit her in a day. And you're certainly not going to be able to get out there and visit her for more than a few hours by the time you get there, because you have to make the return trip. If you want to go hiking up the Appalachian Trail, and you start at the bottom and you come from Atlanta and you drive up to the Appalachian Trail, okay, yeah, you might be able to go ahead and get your vehicle into there. Great. But then if you want to go ahead and have somebody meet you farther down the road, it's a horribly inefficient way of doing things. And it costs a lot more. This is why I said earlier in the show that if we have electric as well as gas, as well as wind, as well as solar, as well as nuclear and all the other processes, and we have them, even if it's almost equal in basis, it's a lot easier to do things and to pick and choose and do whatever is necessary on that particular day. Let's say, for example, we had an equal value. Okay. Well, first off, in order to go ahead and get the nuclear radiation, you got to have something else to help move those turbines. Okay. For the most part, right now, they use running water. That's the biggest way to go ahead and do it. It also has the double effect of cooling those radioactive rods at the same time while you're doing that. Okay. So you only have certain places you can build it in the first place without it overheating because it's right next to water. Okay, well, that limits 2/3 of our country to go ahead and do that. So if we have nuclear reactors, let's say in the east, and you're able to go ahead and use that until you get into the second part of the country here, just the other side of the Mississippi River, and you're starting to use electricity. And you got electricity that takes you down to Texas. Texas has a huge oil field, as well as Oklahoma. All of these oil fields right there. And you use oil to go ahead and get you the rest of the way across the desert, over the mountains, into California and along the West Coast, where once again, you've got all wind, all kinds of wind going up from there. And you can go ahead and continue the rest of the way using the wind power. That is probably, in my opinion, the best way to go because it uses everything equally. It keeps the cost down. It's a very efficient way of going ahead and using every one of these industries, and everybody wins in those sectors. Wow. Another way to put it is it's a dirty business, but somebody's got to do it. You've been listening to Standing on the Edge. As always, I want to thank my friends. I want to thank my friend Lee for watching this video as well today. And of course, everybody else too, my wife included, that loves to go ahead and promote me and to support me as much as possible. If you are willing to go ahead and get in, I need partial sponsors as always. $1 is all I need. $1. All you have to do is go to the GoFundMe page, look for Join Me at the Edge, or Standing on the Edge, as it's called, excuse me. Standing on the Edge, donate $1. That keeps these videos going out to you. You can also go ahead and send me a text at 470-554-2134 or send an email to joinmeattheedge@gmail.com, and I will send you personally the link to the GoFundMe page. My next show is going to be Friday, March 18th, next Friday at noon. But until then, remember to expand your awareness. Think of something every day to help you on your own path, and hopefully soon I will see you joining me on the edge. Have a great weekend, folks.